This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan.
Driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Well, thank you so much, Parker, and welcome to Time Signatures. I'm your host, Jim Ervin, and we are moving into the 2025 Blues Festival season across the United States and Europe. Putting these events on takes time, considerable financial support, but most importantly, it takes you coming out to support these festivals. Since the 2020 COVID pandemic, festival attendance has been down as people remain reserved about getting together in many cases. But despite that trend, one promoter is working hard to repeat the results he enjoyed in 2016 when he saw a 50% increase in attendance at the North Atlantic Blues Festival held in Rockland, Maine. Our guest has been involved with this annual blues festival for, by my account, some 16 years now, but he works with other events as well. Now, there's a lot to talk about here, but I'd like to welcome our guest, Paul, Mr. Blues Benjamin. Paul, welcome to Time Signatures. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I appreciate giving me the chance to speak with you.
Well, it's an honor to have you on. And as I told you before we started, a good friend of ours referred me to you, and he also referred me to Mick Colassa, Mississippi Mick, if you will.
Yeah.
But I'd like to get things going with you. One of my favorite warm-up questions is, what are your earliest memories of music, Paul? Do you have any favorite artists or songs that you had to listen to over and over again?
I like to say as a child, I was dragged. My parents are huge jazz and blues fans. And
Okay.
my dad was from Rhode Island, so Newport Folk Festival and Jazz Festival was a yearly event for my parents. And so as a child at a young age, I would rather go play on the beach, but there was people, they were there more for the jazz part of it, but there was, Muddy Waters and Wolf and people like that were on that stage, and I could care less who they were. I wanted to go play in the sand and on the beach. But that was, and my dad was, like I say, a huge jazz fan. And so listening to music at our home, was a lot of jazz on there, and he would cross over and had some blues as well. But that's my earliest memories, of being inducted to kind of that style of music.
Sure. Now, as you mentioned the blues in with the jazz, when did you find your baptism, if you will, into the genre? When did you really get involved in the blues?
Kind of when the Stones were out. I was, the Beatles were a phenomenal group, but I was a Stones fan. The Rolling Stones just played that gritty kind of music, bluesy type, and so I was kind of hooked on them at that point, and just started researching a little bit more blues, through the Stones, and then just continued to move along. And then 1990, because I've been North Atlantic will be 32 years old this year. And North Atlantic started in a parking lot of a Tradewind. So it was actually we call it Tradewind Blues Bash in 1990.
Okay.
The first band I brought into Maine that as a promoter was Eddie Shaw and the Wolfgang back in 1978.
Wow.
So I've been doing this a long time, and it's just trial and error. I kind of whittled my way through learning all the stuff as being a promoter and other parts of putting on shows and that. And I kind of use Eddie Shaw as kind of my mentor. He was the first guy I brought in, and through Eddie, he invited me out to Chicago, introduced me to a lot of people at the Chicago Blues Fest that I went out to a number of times, and so it kind of started from there.
Very cool. Now, I've been told that you're a very busy man when it comes to blues festivals, so I'd like to get this on the record. How many blues festivals do you currently work with and help promote? I mean, I've heard a little bit of everything, that you dabble in a bunch of different ones.
I do 6 a year.
Okay.
Obviously North Atlantic's my baby. It was the first one I started, and I do one in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I do 3 in Florida, and then I get hired to go out and do one in Denmark. It's a Blues Heaven, which is owned by Peter Ashcroft, but he 6 years ago he invited me to come out and help him work his festival, and now I go out there and he's got so many things to do behind the scenes. So I run the festival as far as getting the bands on and off the stage, introduce them, show them where they got to be, where they get, where they're getting fed, where their dressing rooms are, and what stage they're on. And I introduce them on and off the stage, all three stages. So it's a busy one out there, but I love what I do, and so it's glad I can go out and help them.
Now, which events in Florida are you involved with?
I got Camping with the Blues, which is in October. I got one in March, which is called the Blues Bash at the Ranch, and then I had done the Bradenton Blues Festival for 12 years, and after Bradenton, they had hired me to do that festival. And after 12 years, the city of Bradenton decided to go in a different direction. And so once I found out that festival was going to be gone away, 12 years, it established itself pretty well. It had a good attendance. So I decided to create a brand new festival, and that's what we did, the Lakewood Ranch Blues Festival, which we just did this past a month ago in December. And it was the first one, and that went over really well. So that third one will be in Lakewood Ranch, Florida.
Now, Paul, in addition to all of your work as a promoter of some incredible blues festivals, you're also a record label owner, a music producer. You also have served on the board of directors of the Blues Foundation. I mean, you're a busy guy.
Yeah, busy, but I love it. Actually, I'm back on the board of the Blues Foundation as we speak. I got reelected for the. I guess I go back all the way back to the Blues Foundation with Jay Silman. I went on the board back then, and then I served the 6 years. 3 years, and you can get reelected for a second 3-year term. And
okay.
I'm honored to say that I was the first person ever elected president of the Blues Foundation board that did not reside in Memphis, Tennessee. And so,
wow.
So I served 4 years as president of the board under Jay Silman, rolled off the board, and then I went back on the board. That's when the Blues Foundation decided to raise the funds to get a new home and build a Hall of Fame. So I helped them raise some funds for that. And then Jay called me and said, Paul, don't you think you want to come back on the board? We used to be on the board and we opened the doors to the Blues Foundation. I said, nah, I did my 6 years of hard but good time. And I just, nah. He said, well, you really should be. I said, all right, let me think about it. So I said, all right, I'll put my name in. I got reelected.
Nice.
And then shortly after Jay, that we opened the door to the Blues Hall of Fame, Jay had decided he was going to retire. He didn't tell me that when he invited me back to the board. But
of course not.
So I was on the search committee when we looking for a new CEO of the company for the foundation. That's when we hired Barbara Newman. And so I was kind of worked with Barbara Newman for a couple of years, and actually got reelected to. We spoke with Mick Colosser. Mick was the vice president of the board at that time under vice chair, because they changed it to chair of the board at that point. He was the vice chair, and when it came up time for election, Mick nominated me to be president, a chair of the board. And he said, you have a lot more knowledge and you can do this better than I can. He says, so I'm nominating you. And immediately it got seconded, and I was elected for chair of the board for 2 years under Barbara Newman. And so I told Barbara that she had me for 2 years, and so she created a new position called immediate past chair to keep me on 2 more years with Barbara Newman. And so I did another 6 years and plus the 2 with Barbara, and then I got off the board again. And then the current CEO of the company, Kimberly Horton, she made that same call to me. She said, Paul, she was on the board when I was on the board as chair of the board under Barbara. She said that she got elected. She took the foundation made a couple of hires that weren't good for the foundation, and we'll leave it at that. And then Kimberly got hired, and she called me and said that I'd love to have you back on the board. And I said, I'm a phone call away. I'll be happy to deal with you anytime on the phone, Kimberly, but I really don't need to go back on the board. And so I hung up the phone, and my wife said, they're just going to keep calling you, so you might as well just go back on the board. And so I gave her my name and put my name in to go back on the board, and immediately I got elected and elected to the executive committee, and so I'm back on the board now. And if I can help the foundation with some of my past knowledge, it's a good thing. I was there when the foundation was ready to close the doors and almost all bankruptcy, and Jay took us out of the depths and did a phenomenal job. But Barbara continue to make it grow. And so if I have that knowledge, I can help the foundation continue to grow. How can you say no?
Well, having some good folks on the board like yourself and Mick Kalasa and so many others that have worked hard to help keep the blues alive and help keep the foundation alive is very important. Paul, I want to turn the page here for a moment. I'd like you to talk about the 25th and 26th Blues Music Awards in Memphis, where you served as music producer. Now, we already know that you have a lot of this on your resume, but take us into that process if you can, because I'd really like to discuss that. That's got to be a really weighty event for you, yeah?
It's kind of a funny story. It was my first meeting with the foundation when I got elected to the board, and I'm not sure how it works. So we're sitting at a meeting and they're talking about the Blues Music Awards and how it was costing them money every year. So I reluctantly raised my hand to speak, and they said, "You don't have to raise your hand. We're all adults here. You can just speak up." So I asked the question, why are we paying people to put on our Blues Music Awards when there's people at this table who are now on this board, including Michael Cloran, who put on the Poconos Blues Festival, which is a very successful festival for years and years. And I said, I put on the North Atlantic Blues Festival. I said, we got two people sitting at this table that put on shows for a living. Why are we paying people to put on our show? And Jay Silman said, are you volunteering to be on a committee to be on a show, help us with the BMAs? And I said, absolutely. Well, I went back from that. Actually, that meeting was in Mississippi. I went back to Maine a couple of days after I got home. My phone rings and it's Jay Silman. He says, Paul, guess what? The 25th Blues Music Awards show is yours. You want to make some changes? Let's make them. So I went back to Memphis, on my own dime, and I just said, at that point we used to be at the Orpheum. In the Orpheum, we had to use their people, their sound crew, and all their establishment, and it was they really were not the best group to mix the show. And so at that point, they had just opened up the new convention center in Memphis, and so Jay and I went down to the convention center and we worked out a deal that we could move the music awards show there. So I just said, let's change the whole format. If we're going to do this, let's do something different. And in the past, it was the same two or three people that emceed the show, which was, but none of the artists who won awards hardly ever made it to the show. And so
wow,
I said, we need to fix that. So we decided, or I guess I decided and ran it by the board that we were going to change the venue, move it to the convention center. And if you were nominated for a Blues Music Award, you were going to be on the show. If you were not nominated, you were not going to be on the show. In the past, it was the same 3 or 4 people that always were on the show. So
sure.
So when I changed that format, and I said we're going to have a sit down dinner, we even put a dance floor in the first year, and
Nice.
so all of a sudden I'm getting calls from Alligator Records, booking agencies, and saying, you're telling me that my guy that was been nominated is going to actually be on the show and be seen? I said, absolutely. So all of a sudden, everybody's now calling me and wants to be on the show. And so we decided to go in that route, and then the show was a huge success. Of course, sound check started at 7 o'clock in the morning, and my wife at 6 p.m. when the doors opened had to bring my clothing to change.
Wow.
So I could change because we had to do because it was a new format. We have never had that many people on the show before. And the show worked well. The show went from losing a lot of money to making a very good sum of money. So it was a big turnaround. So the following year, I was the music producer for the second year. And what was cool, 23 out of the 25 awards, the people showed up that first year to receive their awards. And so it was a huge turnaround. And all of a sudden, people, like I say, record labels and booking agents, management started really excited about getting on the show because it showcased their artists. And so that was the same one we used this day and age. And then as a 26, I was responsible for the same thing. That's when I got elected president of the board back then. So then I had a different role, and I trained Joe Whitmer, who's now been working with the foundation for years and done a great job. And so Joe kind of took over running the show, and I just kind of overseen it, and so that's kind of how that took place, and we're still using that format for that show as we speak.
That's very cool. And it's nice because when you do an award show like that, I mean, one would think that the people that are, being honored are going to be performing there, but clearly that was a change that you needed to make, and it's made a big improvement over for sure. I want to go back to the festivals for just a minute. I have to say, looking at the North Atlantic Blues Festival, you got some really good talent that have come looking over the past few years post pandemic. I saw Joanna Connor, Ronnie Baker Brooks, Shamika Copeland, DK Harrell, great young blues band there, and also Danielle Nicole, just to name a few. But that's quite a who's who of the blues, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, over the 30, after when I had my 25th year of North Atlantic, I decided to do a book, and I put a book for the first 25 years of the festival, and it broke, it opened up a lot of memories for me because I had kind of a 2 months period. There was a lady that lived up the street from my wife and I, she was at our house talking. She was an author, and we were talking about the 25th anniversary of the North Atlantic. And she was, you ought to do a book. And I said, never done one. She goes, let me, I said, she goes, what do you have? I said, well, I got photographs from every year. I have the poster from every year. I have the T-shirt from every year.
Wow.
I got the pins when we started doing those. She said, well, you got half of what you need. So I started laying it out year by year by year and putting it together. And then I decided it was more of a pictorial book. And I wrote a paragraph on each year of something that happened that was funny, that something that was absolutely amazing. And so then I was still missing a little bit. So at that point, I contacted about 50 or 60 artists that would performed at the festival and asked them to give a quote. And 52 of them responded with a quote. So I put those quotes in the book on the years that they played and put it together in 2 months. And we had it at the 25th anniversary. And then the 26th anniversary, we put a DVD together, a 3-disc DVD, 4 hours long, and 80% music and 20% interviews of the 25-year history. So
Wow.
it went out and it was well received. And so, but when doing the book, it was eye-opening because when I looked at the headline, the big name, the Coco Taylors, Eddie Shaw's, the Sun Seals, and people that Lonnie Brooks and people like that, I realized that there was over 50 artists in that 25 years that had passed away, and that's not counting how many side people that I did not know their names, but. And so it was very eye-opening, but very rewarding to have that documented. So it was pretty cool to put together.
Well, and in the North Atlantic Blues Festival was also voted the best in the nation by the Blues Foundation in 2002. So you've definitely, definitely put in the work. In 2016, when most of the blues festivals across the nation were showing lower turnouts, you actually showed a 50% increase at the gate. I'd like to talk about that for a minute with you and kind of get your take on why you think that might be the case. But then also post-pandemic, Paul, how are things looking as you go forward into 2025? So it's a two-part question for you.
Well, I think, a lot of it has to do with the lineup. I mean, and of course, the 5 point sell for the North Atlantic, I said it's Maine. It's July, it's on the ocean, it's great blues, and we serve lobster. So,
You're making me hungry, man.
And so we saw an increase from when we first did it, North Atlantic. We lost a little bit of money year one, and then we kind of were breaking even after year two. And then we could start getting some sponsorship and creating the festival. We went from a 1 day to a 2 day, and then we added a Club Pro, downtown. So we saw an increase pretty much yearly, every year, almost actually up to 2020. We had an increase every year, and then 2020 when we had this close it down for COVID. But and then when we came back in 21, the following year after COVID, that was the biggest boom we ever had. I think people are actually anxious to get back outside and do things. And we had that festival, that was probably the biggest increase. From 2019, we obviously missed 2020, but 2021 after COVID, it was a big surge in people going out. And then it's leveled off since then. I agree with your earlier comment that, a lot of festival numbers have been down throughout the country because of COVID. And, and we took a hit after 21, not a big hit, but we went down, 10 or 15%, but we had such a big increase for 21. It was kind of hard to figure out. So, but in the last couple of few years, it's gone down a little bit. And I think festivals have gone down a little bit everywhere. But on the other hand, there's a lot more festivals out there. There's a lot more to choose from. And
Yes.
when we first started doing North Atlantic in Maine, we were the only show of that nature in Maine. And then, now Live Nation does shows all over Maine, and there's a lot of competition throughout the summer months. And so that does affect, people only have so much money to spend. And if there's some big shows coming in your area, you're competing with those bigger shows and those bigger, the Live Nations that, they just got so much revenue to spend and advertise that hurts the little guy that's putting on the small festivals. And so some of the festivals do struggle competing with the big companies that do other events. And so that kind of hurts them. But the blues is alive and well. And it was kind of showcasing. And I decided to do this brand new festival in Lakewood, Florida, in December. I had basically 3 weeks to put it together while I was in Florida once I found out that the Braden's had canceled. And we had a great crowd for the first year. And we thought, that one I believe will be a successful festival. So, it's trial and error. You've got to give the audience what they want. You've got to give the artist what they want. You want to make a combination that the artists are having fun on the stage. If the artists are having fun, that means the audience is having a great time. If the audience is showing a great time, the artist even having a better time. So it's kind of a mix. And when putting shows together is, I think, key. Do I put my favorite bands on the shows? Absolutely not. Now a lot of them are, because I've been doing this, for 40 years, over 40 years. But you got to look at who's up and coming. Like you mentioned, DK Harold, who's up and coming. And who's out there that's going to give you the crowd that's going to be that name that people recognize, are going to want to see. But you got to create. You might be a guitar fan, I might be a piano fan or a horn fan, and someone else might be a female vocalist fan. So you got to create. You bring in a little bit of all the different genres of the music, which will you have a better chance to bring in more people, because I always get asked by the press, who's your headliner? We use North Atlantic, for instance. Who's your headliner for North Atlantic? And my answer to that is I have 12 headliners. Whoever you bought a ticket for is your headliner.
There you go.
What did you buy a ticket? So, and I said somebody has to open the show and somebody has to close the show. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're the headliner because they're closing the show. We mentioned Shamika Copeland. I booked her at 17 years old, and she opened the show on a Sunday morning. And I had people like that who have opened shows for me, and they headline festivals all over the world now. But she opened the show. You mentioned Vanessa Collier. She opened a show for me a few years back when she was up and coming and new. And to this day, she still holds the record for the most CDs sold at a festival. She sold over 400 CDs at that festival.
Wow.
And so it's not. Like you say, I mean, whoever made you buy a ticket is your headline, and that's how I look at that.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you, I've had some good fortune over the last 2 years. I'm also a professional photographer, and I do a lot of the blues concert stuff in the Michigan area and whatnot. And I've been able to see. I was hoping to see Joanne Shaw Taylor, but they just closed the Kalamazoo State Theater, unfortunately, back in December. So that show's gone. I was going to celebrate my birthday down there with that. But I did
Good
get to
show to
see
do it
Matthias.
with.
What's that?
I said it's a great show. That would have been a great show to do it with.
Well, I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
buddy, I'm watching her calendar because I'm hoping that we'll get something in Michigan again. I missed an opportunity I think it was last summer to see her when she came through, but I'll get her. I'll get a chance to go see her. But I did go get to see Danielle Nicole down in southwestern Lower Michigan, Matthias Latine. Another guy I'm sure he's on your radar, Ben Levin out of Cincinnati. He's an amazing musician. A lot of really good young folks coming into the fold here, and I mean, everybody loves Kingfish, etc. um, but it's a good time for sure. But Paul, looking over your considerable body of work, I honestly think it's safe to say that you've done your part to keep the blues alive. But what about the rest of us? Are we doing enough right now to keep this genre in the mainstream above the noise level, if you will?
There are like people like yourself, DJs and other things like that. I mean, you with your podcast, the more people who talk about the blues and get the word out there about the blues is good for the blues. I think this
Sure.
new young breed of blues artists that are coming up, like Matthias and the Kingfishers and Vanessa's is not a newcomer anymore. She's been out there for a number of years, but
Yep.
people like that and it's definitely good for the blues because I'm starting to see a little bit of a somewhat of a younger audience coming to the festivals with those people are playing. And as you probably know, going to festivals, the average age of the blues festival is, AARP. It's
Yep.
60 years older and 65 and older. And so it's nice now and then to see some younger people starting to show up at some of the shows. And I think when, these younger artists talk about when they're on the stage that some of their influences and they bring up the Muddies and the Wolves or the Cocos and or the Etta James, and people like that. People that might not be aware of those artists, start looking up and seeing who they're talking about. So I think right now, I think the blues, it's like any genre of music. It has its highs and lows. I think right now the blues is on its way up to another high for a while because there's so many young, talented artists out there
Yes.
that are just really going out there and showing the people that the blues is very well alive and very healthy. And I just think right now I'm seeing almost a boom. I'm starting to see a few more festivals starting to open up. You're seeing some of the clubs that were closed during the pandemic are now reopening under new ownership, but they're still doing blues. And so and there's so many we lost that we'll never get back. But I think
Yeah.
right now that the blues is healthy due to the young artists. Next week I'll be in Memphis, Tennessee for the International Blues Challenge, and that is a big boost for those new artists and young artists. Because it's just so much, there's, usually well over usually 100 bands and 50, 60 solo acts and, from all over the world, and they get a chance to showcase in Memphis, Tennessee. And I'm to be honest, I've hired numerous bands that I actually saw at the IBC for the first time and played some of my festivals. Yesterday I was hanging out with
Nice.
Mr. Swift, in his hometown. We stopped by, he took me, showed me his Mississippi Trail marker, and we had that same conversation, and just talking about some of these young artists that are helping the blues not revive, but just keeping it going. And so I think that I feel confident that the blues is doing well at this point.
Good, good. And I want to put another band on your radar. Melon Jelly is going to be competing at the IBC this year.
Mhm.
They just put out an album that they're timing the release with the IBC.
Cool.
And I just had them on. We're going to be going to be promoting them as they get ready to go to the IBC. But fantastic group of people. Without a doubt, the music business has been forever changed by the advent of streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music, etc. When it comes down, when it takes 1,500 streams in order to equal the sale of one copy of an album, CD or vinyl, What advice would you offer to the fans of today's blues musicians? Because honestly, I think that most don't understand or appreciate the consequences of straight streaming versus purchasing and then streaming.
My advice is if you're going to support live music anytime you can, it's in your area, and just not necessarily blues, any live music,
Right.
but buy that CD, buy that T-shirt from the artist when they have their merchandise available. That puts more money in their pocket than if they had 10,000 views or hits. I mean, and and so that's where they get their their money. If they have a tip jar on the stage when they're playing, and it don't hurt if you can't buy a CD, but if you put a couple bucks in there, that helps them a lot. And even a couple dollars is more than they're going to get if they have 10,000 plays. So that part of the music industry, I would love to see change for the artist, that they would get more. All the different ones I have to pay into to run the shows I do. You'd like to see the artist get a little bit, bigger piece of that pie instead of just getting to sniff the pie or look at it. They don't get to taste any of it. So I think it's important for people to support, the artist, and if they can have that extra little bit of money to purchase that CD or purchase a T-shirt, that goes a long way to help the artist.
Absolutely. Well, Paul, I know that you have an incredible book out there celebrating 25 years of the North Atlantic Blues Festival, also the DVD that you referenced. So where can folks find information about you? Maybe if they want to go and purchase some of your merchandise, where can they get this? And do you offer it signed?
Yes, I've signed the books all the time, and and I'll be happy to sign and send you one for your and the DVD. But if you go on under the North Atlantic Blues Festival, there's the link in merch, and it has the CDs and DVDs that I've been involved with, and also the book is there. So just go to NorthAtlanticBluesFestival.com and click on merch, and you'll see all that stuff there. Because it's, and then they can follow me, obviously on Facebook and that, because each one of my festivals, it's its own corporation. So it's not one place you can go see all of them. It's just because it's just protection wise, they're all under individual corporations. So North Atlantic has its own corporation, Lobster does, the ones I do in Florida does, and so and it's just and I probably I do have my Facebook page, and I keep it pretty much strictly what's going on in the blues world, or some of, as you say, you follow me as well in some of my travels, but it's usually blues orientated, and so that'd be the easiest and quickest way.
Yeah, and I did see you with Mr. Sip a couple days ago. That was really kind of cool to see that post. But one of the things that I do on my podcast, Paul, is I don't have any sponsors. I do what I call a reverse sponsorship. And a reverse sponsorship is basically me giving an extra word during an interview for a 501c3 that I happen to appreciate and support. And since you're on today, I'd like to put a special word out for people who are not members yet of the Blues Foundation. They are a very worthwhile organization. As you know, they put on the International Blues Challenge. They have the Blues Music Awards every year. May, I believe it is, April, May. They also have the Blues Hall of Fame. I would like to encourage everybody out there, if you don't want to become a member, make a donation. And if they want to do that, since you're a part of that board, where can people go to make a donation to the Blues Foundation, sir?
Blues.org. It'll bring you right to the Blues Foundation, and when like I said, the IBC is coming out next in another week. The BMAs will be in May, and if you want to vote for your favorite artist, it's $25 a year to join the Blues Foundation. There's other levels of paying you can do, but the $25 a year, you get a chance to vote for your favorite artist to win the BMA, which is very helpful to an artist that gets nominated for a BMA. And you also, and the foundation is a great organization. It's doing their work, they're part of keeping the blues alive around the world. And
Yes.
So, it's a great organization to join. I've been a member for many, many, many years. and as well as my wife. And it's a great organization. And like I say, and you get a chance to get rooms for the IBC ahead of time before they go on out to the general public. Because the membership gets notified first when these events are going to happen, and they get a chance to buy their tickets and get their rooms before they run out. So it's like I say, the Heart Fund, they help so many artists with that are sick and need help. And the Generation Blues, they send kids to blues camps. And so there's a lot that the Blues Foundation does, and it's a great organization. For $25 a year, it's a pretty cheap group to be part of.
Yes, it is. And I'm late to the game. I have not been involved with the blues organization as early as I should have in life, but I can tell you I believe in what they do. I love what they do. Matter of fact, being down there at Beale Street is on my bucket list. I was going to go this year, and unfortunately I couldn't make it. But we are looking forward to going down there as soon as we can. Paul Benjamin, my extreme thanks for joining me today on Time Signatures. I wish you much success, and I would love to help promote your events. Anytime you need a microphone, consider yourself welcome, sir.
I appreciate that. And like I say, this was fun. I hope we can do this more often.
You are welcome anytime. And, I do a lot of promotional content. So if you have an event, if you want to do something in advance of the North Atlantic Blues Festival or one of the other events that you work with, it'd be my honor to welcome you back anytime.
My pleasure. And thank you for your time. It was great chatting with you today.
Very good. Well, that wraps up this edition of Time Signatures. Once again, my thanks to Paul Benjamin, but also to you, for without you, none of this would be possible. Jim Ervin reminding you that keeping the blues alive is everyone's responsibility, but preserving the history of the blues one story at a time, that's my mission. Until next time, so long, everyone.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lccconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.
Baby, I'm home.